Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever the case may be. You're all very, very welcome to a bit of a special transfer day Khanage. It's not even transfer window yet, but we thought we'd get into the spirit of things. And, it's getting to that time of year where some people call it silly season, some people call it serious season. For Liverpool, it's most certainly or should be a serious season in this transfer window. So we thought we have a bit of a chat about some of the topics or one main topic in particular. And of course, I've got a couple of mates, friends, associates in Avi's case, to come and talk to me. Avi, hope you're doing very well out in California. Is it sunny California? Because just
No,
always goes in it. When you say California, you just got to add sunny to it for no reason. Like, I don't even know if it's sunny out there.
not today. Today it's misty. It's been foggy. It's been raining, to be honest, for the last week or so. So
Really?
the weather ain't great. But yeah, no, I'm happy to be on today.
But the
And
temperature don't dip like it dips in the UK, right?
no,
Like
we don't get
the
into the minuses. No, we're still like average 15, 18 degrees. So
in winter.
in the winter, yeah.
Wow, 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 wow.
So we're still good.
Um,
The west coast is always it's still warm.
okay, fair enough, fair enough. I guess that explains why our special guest for today, Zach, is quite happy and not glum as well, like us guys in UK, because it must mean you're out in Texas. She was telling me, weren't you? So it's not too bad. Zach, of course, welcome to the channel again. Zach, of course, co-creator of BT LVID guys and Beyond the Pitch. He's subscribed to his channel, his BTO podcast. Sorry, subscribe to his podcast. The guy is on too many platforms for me to mention. It will take up most of the show. But if you type in Zach Lowy, you will get his resume up. You're so welcome, my friend. Good to see you again.
Hey, I'm doing very well, Grizz. Glad to be back on. I think the last time I was on here, we were discussing another South American Benfica player. So really excited to be back on the show today.
And you know what? A lot of Liverpool fans will suggest that that's a good omens because it wasn't signed or sealed or anything like that. It was just a lot of talk, and I was pretty convinced that he would end up a Liverpool player, and that didn't work out too bad. So the omens will be good. People will say, "Oh, he's got Zach again." That will be good. That's a positive sign. Just before we get into sort of the main topic of the day, Darwin Núñez's time so far at Liverpool from the outside. How are you viewing it? How do people see it from the outside? Obviously, me and Avi are Liverpool fans. We are very biased. But what do you make of it?
You know what? I think there have definitely been some bumps on the road, which I definitely expected. Because I think that one of the things about Darwin that makes him somewhat unique to the other players who are coming from the Primera Liga is technical ability isn't necessarily his strong suit. He's much more of a physical bulldozer who's going to, who has the pace and off the ball movement. Some things that may not appear in TikToks and YouTube highlight reels. He's not exactly a finesse player. But with that being said, he's scored a decent amount of goals. I definitely don't think he's been a flop so far. I do think though that there are certain things, both mental and technical, that Darwin is going to have to work at to reach the next step and to become one of the best strikers in football, which I still believe he can. So it's been, I would say it's been hot and cold. Obviously, that red card headbutting Joachim Anderson didn't help matters. But these are some things that young players have to deal with. And Darwin, he's shown that he can fight off a poor start. I don't want to say poor, but he didn't have the best of starts at Benfica, and he ended up finishing as the top scorer in the league the following season. So I firmly believe that he has what it takes to reach the top level, and I think that there are certain characteristics that are definitely well suited for the Premier League. I also think that when you look at coaches who are capable of taking a raw attacker and polishing them and taking them to the next level, there are a few better coaches than Jurgen Klopp. So I'm very confident that he's in the right place, and I think that when you look at the teams that are right for him, I do think that Liverpool was the right fit because for several reasons. One, Liverpool don't really have an out and out center forward. They have players like Diogo Jota and Roberto Firmino, and so that means that Darwin, he's not going to be, obviously he isn't. He's not going to be gift wrapped into the starting XI. He's going to have to work for it. I think is only going to help him improve as a player and sort of his weaknesses. But I do feel like a lot of people, maybe they wanted to hate on him before they had their agenda, and they're not going to turn it around anytime soon. So Darwin, he's going to have to convince them. But at the end of the day, I also think that Liverpool, they're kind of a special club in that you don't see as many of their fans getting on a new kind of putting up an agenda on them like you see in a lot of other top clubs. So I do think that for the most part, he's got the backing of the manager, he's got the backing of the technical staff and the fans, and I think that this is obviously going to be a transitional year for Darwin, learning the ropes and getting the hang of it. You don't pay you. I said this before when I was on the show. You don't pay, what was it, 100 million, 75 plus 25 in add-ons for the current version of Darwin. You pay that for the current version as well as what he can provide over the next decade. So I'm very confident that he's on the right track.
Avi, obviously, it's well known that you're was a massive fan, still are, absolutely confident. But Zach makes a very good point in terms of his start at Benfica wasn't smooth sailing. He had a rough patch, and I wouldn't say it's a rough patch at Liverpool to start off with, but that red card made it. Like on the pitch, he's been fine. It hasn't been a rough patch if you look at analyze his performances or numbers, but that red card just put a little bit of a shadow over it. But like Zach says, he seems to be the kind of guy that embraces madness, chaos, and it inspires him to do better. You're absolutely of the opinion that he's going to be a blooming success, isn't he? You're on mute, which normally I'd say thank God, but today I need you.
Apologies, Grizz. Yeah, it was his second season at Benfica where he really exploded, where he was scoring like a goal every game. I think he got 34, 35 last season in the end. And obviously the two showings at Anfield and then at the Stadio when he played against us in the Champions League was brilliant. And this season, he scored on his debut against Fulham, came off the bench, and you thought, okay, I was one of those, stupid enough to say he's going to go toe-to-toe with Haaland in terms of goal scoring. But, that's
the only bit you got carried away, but slightly.
Slightly carried away. But no, I always believed in, and obviously still do. I think he will be an absolute brilliant player for us. He is Mr. Chaos, Pandemonium. He has the materials to like go in a 90-minute game and just cause mayhem. And he's done that for us. He's done that in some games. It's taken him time to get into rhythm. And just as he was getting into rhythm, the World Cup comes, and some people have been criticizing him for the World Cup showing. I thought the Uruguayan team, underachieved massively. But now he's got to sort of start all over again, to show that momentum that he had from club level and going to the World Cup. He's got to get back onto that momentum he showed just before the World Cup. And I think he will. I'm not sure if he's going to get game time on Thursday, but I think he will now carry on. And I think he's got 9 in 19. I think he'll hit 25. I said, if he hits 25 this season, I think that represents a great season for him.
Oh, absolutely. If he hits 25, that's an absolute great season. Very quickly, guys, both of you, before we move on from the Darwin Núñez chat. I mean, this is what Darwin Núñez does, right? He ends up being the main attraction, star talking point about everything and anything. Position-wise, we saw in Uruguay in the World Cup, Zach, that obviously he was sort of kind of shifted out to the left because of Suarez, because of Cavani maybe. For Liverpool as well, with the Diogo Jota injury, with the Luis Diaz injury, and Bobby being predominantly only being able to play through the middle. Do you think this is his just part of his learning process on the left as he develops into his role, and that eventually he will end up central? Or do you think he's equally as potent and dangerous out on the left? If you know what I mean. It's not left, you know what I mean when I say left side of a front three.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think that I think there's Roberto Firmino has probably been one of the few players on Liverpool who have actually met expectations, if not exceeded them this season. I've
Yeah.
been pleasantly surprised by how he's done. And I one thing I'll say as well is that, like, let's be real, this has been a pretty underwhelming start to the season for Liverpool.
Yep.
I think that as a young player coming to a new country, it's kind of hard to fit in when you've got so much mayhem in the club's results. So I think that, yeah, when you look at the current situation, I mean, you've got Jota, Diaz injured for, I'm not sure how much longer they're going to be out for. So I guess that leaves you with.
So we're looking at Jota another 4 to
February,
6 weeks.
February, no?
Yeah, so Jota another 4 to 6 weeks, and Lewis slightly more. You're looking at in totality probably about 3 months. So
Okay.
that's a bit of a dagger blow. The Luis Diaz one's a dagger blow, but even if Jota comes back, because Jota was really playing well on that left, equally as well as through the middle.
Yeah, so I mean, I guess that leaves you with, I mean, apart from Salah, Firmino, Núñez, Fabio, Harvey Elliott, I guess. I'm not
Possibly.
sure. I'm maybe I'm forgetting one or two players, but
That's it.
they're kind of paper thin at the moment. So yeah, I do think that Darwin, he is going to have to make a go of it on the left. And I'm not sure how that's going to go, because I think that Salah, he's not necessarily a pure winger. He's more of an inside forward who thrives on having Roberto Firmino drop deep and link the play. That's been such an effective partnership. So I'm curious, are they going to be able to achieve that balance with someone like Darwin, who is a pure center forward, who I truly believe will end up as a center forward eventually when they move on from Firmino. And I think that, yeah, he has played on the left for Uruguay and Benfica. But there have been also, there were a lot of occasions last season where, partly due to the fact that Benfica had a ton of center forwards and not that many wingers, where they needed a goal, they would bring on a center forward and shift Darwin to the left. And I felt like a lot of times putting him away from the center forward and shifting him to the flank, it was somewhat uncomfortable for him, because he's not that kind of player who's going to get an advantage from a standing start, who's going to beat a man 1v1. But those are just aspects of the game that he needs to work on. Darwin, he's scoring at a very decent amount for a player who's playing in a top 5 league for the first time in his career. But there are definitely some aspects of his game that he needs to work on, and I do think that playing on the left is going to help him. I was speaking to Emmanuel Boateng, the current Rio Ave ex-Levante striker, and just speaking to him about that, because he's a traditional center forward and he's been having to play on the flank to suit his team. And he just mentioned how that's forced him to improve defensively in terms of making the right runs and linking up. So I think that Darwin, he's not the kind of guy who's going to put his feet up and say, my coach is playing me in the wrong position, I'm not going to, I think he's going to be someone who's going to take that challenge to heart, and I expect him to improve. But yeah, there are certain, I definitely think that center forward is where his future is headed. With that being said, there are certainly some aspects that he needs to improve on, and certain aspects that I definitely think he can learn from Roberto Firmino, whether that's making the right pass on the counter and not trying to do too much with it, just holding the ball up and making the simple decision. I think decision making, that's probably the biggest thing.
For sure.
As well as just general hold up play, maybe sometimes not being as selfish on the ball. All of these things, he definitely needs to work on. So, for me, I'm not too surprised by how Darwin is doing. I said that there were going to be a lot of things that he needs to work on. I said that, as good as Darwin is, I thought that Haaland was going to do a lot better. And frankly, I mean, I also think there's a danger of, similarly to what we've seen from Kylian Mbappe, of just, seeing this Norwegian freak, take Europe and England by storm and just think, oh, well, my striker should be doing that. No. Erling Haaland is a once in a generation talent. You cannot compare your striker to. Okay, I'm sorry. Frankly, I mean, Liverpool would never be able to afford Haaland's wages either. So it's kind of a dumb comparison, in my opinion. So yeah, Darwin. Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, it absolutely was and is. But what we tried to do with Darwin Núñez was try to get him.
Núñez.
You know what? I'm so glad Zach's on today because I have a history of mad pronunciations, and I remember you correcting me on the way to pronounce or the correct way of saying Sporting. Now, but you, Avi, how do you say that team from Lisbon? What's the correct way? Was it
the one that Ruben Amorim, the one that manages? Sporting Lisbon.
No.
Sporting.
But anyway, we'll move on.
Enlighten me. No, Zach, enlighten me. How do you pronounce it?
Oh, it's just Sporting. A lot of people think it's Sporting Lisbon, but that's not the name at all. The official name of the club is Sporting Clube de Portugal, and Sporting fans get really offended when you call it Sporting.
You don't say Sporting Lisbon. You don't add the Lisbon.
You just say Sporting.
Yeah, you just say Sporting. But we may touch on Sporting and we may touch on everything else as well. But yeah, look, with the Núñez stuff, I think we tried to get there early, didn't we? Before you can tell he's at least a year behind in terms of progression as a player. Beyond Haaland. Haaland had that season, didn't he, at Dortmund, Avi? He had the breakout at Salzburg and then he had a wonderful time at Dortmund. Whereas we've tried to get Núñez straight from Benfica without going to a higher level team than Benfica. For example, like a Dortmund, we tried to get him there without him making that move, isn't it? And it's always going to be a risk, but so far so good. Mo Salah is the original one if people are confused. A good friend of the show. He says, for Uruguay, Núñez was doing too much defending when wide, but for LFC, we have more ball, better play, so he's a real threat out wide. He's still got to learn that, isn't it? He's still got to learn that because we're so used to, like Zach saying, people compare him to Haaland. When he's playing left for us, who do we compare him to? The legendary Sadio Mane. He's a total different player to Sadio Mane.
Absolutely. I do think, though, that one thing that will bode in his favor is he is pretty fast for a big man. You know, he can break it on the counter. He can accelerate and yeah. But the thing is, like I said, I think that he can run fast, but he needs to think fast as well.
Yeah.
One thing that Jurgen Klopp is definitely going to drill home with him.
Very quickly, Zach Clarence wants to know what team does Zach support?
So I support St. Louis City. I've been writing for them for the past year or so, and I've always been indebted for them, you know, giving a chance on a kid just out of college, and it's been a really cool adventure to be working with an MLS team. They're going to play their first MLS game in, I think, February. They just released the schedule today, and I did not check it before. But it's
you are.
I believe it's going to be late February, early March, and I'm really excited. I'm really excited to keep on working with them, and I'm definitely going to try to fly out to St. Louis to catch a game this season.
Who's your MLS team, Avi?
It'd have to be San Jose Earthquakes. They're the nearest team to us.
Oh,
we had let me see. No, we didn't. We've got one Chris Wondolowski. I think he's just retired now, but he was a superstar for San Jose. And yeah, we had this Dutch striker, which we played for Ajax Academy. But yeah, we're not a great team. When we say I'm just one of those fans who gets free tickets to the Avaya Stadium, so I'll go when I get a chance.
Why not? Guys, there's 350 in here, and apparently not even 100 likes so far. Like, I don't know why. Is it because Avi's on the screen? What is it? Why is there no 100 likes on the screen? Can we get the likes up and let's get going? World Cup's over. We've seen some fantastic performances from pretty much all the guys, Avi, that we thought are going to light up the stage. I personally, as you know, didn't think Cristiano Ronaldo was going to light up the stage, so that's not a surprise or a shock for me. But everyone else that we spoke of before the World Cup, look out for player X, player Y, player Z, pretty much fulfill the potential and some even more. I think the player that we're going to speak on is one of those players that excelled expectations for you, or do you think no, that's pretty much his level? So obviously, if people don't know who we're talking about Enzo Fernandez, um, voted young player of the World Cup, I believe. That's huge. That's massive, isn't it, for someone in his first tournament, right? Avi?
Yeah. We had heard of him pre-World Cup, and he didn't play in the Saudi game. And you felt that Scaloni sort of, he needed some injection of youth, a bit of energy. And after that, he switched it, didn't he? He brought on, he started playing like Julian Alvarez, and then Enzo Fernandez. And yeah, Enzo brought a little bit of, not just steel, but he's a great rotator of the ball in the middle of the park alongside, he had Rodrigo de Paul doing the dirty work. But Enzo was, he was the difference, scored that goal against Mexico, and from there he never looked back, and rightly so. He wins the player of the year, wins the player of the tournament, and in the final, I thought for the first 70 up until France getting that sort of goal that you thought was a consolation goal, but it wasn't. Obviously, he was magnificent, Grizz. At 21 years old, the maturity that he showed, and we saw it with Jude Bellingham with England, and we've seen it like with Yunus Musa for the USA as well. These young players now that are coming through, they've, we always talk about maturity and it comes with age, but they, all three of them, and especially like Enzo, they showed it at a tender age of 21. So, the schooling that he's had under, I think majority of his time was under Marcelo Gallardo, who was an ex-Argentinian player, and he's done wonders out.
What a player
Marcelo Gallardo was,
was.
for River Plate. So he's the manager of River Plate. He brought him along nicely, got his move to Benfica. But yeah, at the World Cup, as soon as he was a mainstay, Argentina and himself, they never looked back, really.
We've got the wonderful Anfield Talk, who my favorite, without a shadow of a doubt, my favorite LFC fan site on the internet. Welcome to the stream. First time I've seen them in my stream, so welcome, guys. I don't know if that's Ben or if that's one of Aaron or one of the other lads, but welcome still. Yeah, I guess. Look, Avi mentioned River Plate, and that's where the story started for this kid, right? He comes up through the ranks at River Plate. We were just speaking before we went live, and I was telling you that some Man City fans were this close to suggesting that they were this close to securing both not only Julian Alvarez. I'm not going to say Julian because you're here to slap my wrist. How do you say it?
Julian Alvarez.
Julian Alvarez. Not only were they ready to secure Julian Alvarez, but apparently they were in for Enzo Fernandez. My God, that would have been quite disheartening for the rest of the teams in Europe. But so he's the same age, same height, same build as Julian Alvarez, completely different player. Tell us about sort of his rise through the ranks at River Plate and how Benfica, wow, they've got this, where do they find these gems from? And in the end, it was around 10 million euros, I believe.
Yes, I believe it was 10 million euros plus 8 million euros in add-ons. And that was for 75% of the release, 75% of his transfer rights. So yeah, a little bit about Enzo's contract and potential, transfer fee. Enzo signed a contract until 2027 with a release clause of 120 million euros. So assuming that a club would exercise that release clause and sign him for under 20 million, that would mean that Benfica would be entitled to 75%, and that would mean that I think River would get 30 million. But I'm not sure if it would be 30 million because I know that I think Defensa y Justicia, where he played on loan for a year, I think I read somewhere that they would be entitled to a percentage. You also have commissions.
Oh wow! So they've got a percentage owing as well
to worry about and stuff. So that's one thing that I'll say. When taking into account his price tag, Benfica, when they do sell him, they're going to have to give up a significant portion of the pie. And you know that it was worth it. Okay, so yeah. real quick before I go any further, I was just on BBC World Service an hour ago talking about Enzo Fernandez's World Cup, so make sure to check that out. But yeah, with regards to Enzo, I mean, he's just had an incredible rise. I remember, he was linked to Benfica shortly after the Darwin sale, and I think that it's clear that the selling Darwin for a massive amount gave them a lot of money to work with, and yeah, and so there were just a million teams linked with him: Wolves, Milan. I don't remember Manchester City being involved, but they may very well have been. But there were plenty of teams, and I think that when there were a lot of transfer rumors, a lot of people were saying that River were going to want to keep him until the end of the year, all this. But eventually Benfica won the race. They beat out everyone in terms of not just the price tag, but also giving River a future percentage of his transfer value, which was massive for them. And right after River lost in the Copa Libertadores, he went straight from Argentina to Portugal and was quickly ushered into the team in preseason under new manager Roger Schmidt. So he had like no rest whatsoever. Okay, he went straight from playing at River to playing for Roger Schmidt, and that allowed, and he really quickly transitioned in. And I think that he actually scored 3 goals in his first 3 official matches, if I'm not mistaken. I think 2 of them were volleys. But the first game that I watched of Enzo, I think it was Benfica's league opener against Arauca. And I just remember having this feeling that I rarely feel when I watch a player for the first time. But I think that in Benfica, they got to halftime. I think they were 3-0 up. And I just remember thinking, man, I'm in love with this kid, Enzo Fernandez. I mean, he's just so good. He's so complete. People ask me all the time, what is Enzo's biggest skill set? And I would argue the biggest skill that he has is just being such a complete midfielder. There's really nothing that he can't do. He's a very good goal scoring midfielder in terms of making runs into the edge of the box and firing a shot in. I would say he's kind of a mix of a deep lying playmaker and a box to box midfielder. Right now, he's been playing in the double pivot of Roger Schmidt's 4-2-3-1, typically alongside Florentino Luis, who's more of a defensive prototype. So yeah, Enzo, he's come in from a new country, a new continent, and he's played pretty much every single match. I think that the only match that Enzo missed for Benfica prior to the World Cup was the final Champions League match against Maccabi Haifa, I believe, and I think that was due to suspension. So he's played pretty much every single match for Benfica, and he really hasn't missed a beat. I mean, you would expect a young player of 21 years to start feeling some fatigue, but honestly, I mean, Roger Schmidt has barely rotated him, and he's still just so dynamic. I think that says a lot about his stamina, his physical profile. He's not the strongest guy. He's not the biggest guy, shall I say, but he's a giant on the pitch. He's never shying away from 50-50s. He's always, coming off his line and trying to break up the counter and winning possession back. And that's absolutely massive. And I think that definitely says a lot about his maturity and just his discipline. If I had to pinpoint one flaw of Enzo, I would say maybe being a bit rash in some tackles. I think that there have been several times where he gets booked early on, and Roger Schmidt gets worried and subs him off in like the 70th minute or so. So there are definitely some moments where I think, yeah, he needs to tone it down, and that's something that I think coming from a league like Argentina to Europe, you're going to have to learn to play a little less aggressive in some regards. But with that being said, I just think that Enzo is so complete. He's so good at maneuvering through pressure and linking up with teammates, and he can definitely, he can switch the play. He can make that inch perfect, long pass. But he's not going to play a Hollywood pass for the sake of it. He's very smart, and isn't he'll play a few short passes to draw out the opposition and put them into disarray before linking up. So I think he's just so intelligent, and he's really, yes, he's for me, he's the complete midfielder. I think that as well, with this kind of social media generation, a lot of people, they really only focus on the dribbles, the passes, the goals. But the fact is, football is not just about who scores more goals. It's about who concedes fewer. And to be a top class midfielder, you need to be good on both on the ball and off the ball. And that's what Enzo does. He's so really so complete at getting at protecting his defense, at putting a foot in and winning possession back. I just think he's for me, he's already one of the most complete midfielders in football.
Avi, that's quite the build up for Enzo Fernandez from Zach. I know you're a massive fan as well. I know. Must shout out to Moby Huck on Twitter, who I think, correct me if I'm wrong, sort of pointed you in the direction of Enzo Fernandez about a year ago. Check out this guy, and I think you've kept a quite keen eye on him as well since then. Are you as convinced? I'm just let you answer that. Ahmed says he goes, big up the panel. Love listening to Avi and Zach. Is it fair to compare the profile of Naby to Enzo Fernandez? Only a profile. Obviously, I hope it's only a profile stylistically in terms of playing and not the durability, because from what Zach said, it's the complete opposite of our very own Naby Keita, who fails to play more than a game a month. But your thoughts on Enzo, and do you see the traits that Zach is talking of as well, and or what are your favorite traits about him?
100%. And the key element that I saw, and very few not very few, all the smart midfielders have it. And you mentioned Florentino Luis, who's another big talent as well at Benfica as well. I'm sure he'll be getting a move in the next year or so. But with Enzo, Grizz, something that I saw in him is nothing phases him. He's a very patient footballer. You remember our very own sort of like Xabi Alonso. Gerrard was frantic and he was box to box. With Xabi Alonso, nothing would phase him, whether we were 1-0 down or we were drawing in the 80th minute. He would just control game and play to his style. Thiago's very similar. They don't get phased by the scoreline or they've got to hurry the game up, or like Modric, they will play to their tempo. And Enzo, I feel the games that I saw him in the World Cup, and yes, we shouldn't judge a player off the back of a 3-4 game World Cup. We've done that in the past, Liverpool especially. But obviously, we've seen a little bit of Enzo through Benfica, the little clips that we've seen of him. He's a very patient footballer, and that's a key trait. And at 21, he's mastering that already. Like, hey, listen, we don't need to panic if we've lost possession or if we've conceded a goal. I'm going to play my way. I'm not going to frantically start chasing off the ball. I'll play my style for 90 minutes. And more often than not, Grizz, it'll be a successful trait of his. I think we see that. I think, again, he moves the ball really well. He can move it quickly. He can move it, when he likes in terms of tempo. We've seen him go forward. He can play the 6 role very comfortably, where he can just sit back and see the game in front of him. Or he can play as an 8. I don't think we saw him as an 8 as much as we would like, but it's definitely a trait in him. I think for Benfica, we've seen him push forward. And like Zach said, he has scored a few goals, when he first signed. So we have seen a few clips of YouTube where he has pushed forward. And the goal against Mexico as well, he's got it in his locker to score a worldie when he needs to, or take a shot, which we lack at Liverpool. We lack sometimes our midfielders to take a punt, to take a shot, whether it's Henderson, Fabinho, Thiago, and yeah, they might hit a screamer once in a blue moon, but we need players to take more risk. And I feel Enzo, he's the kind of midfielder to do that. And you know what? For me, I loved Mascherano. Grizz did too. I love Argentinian midfielders in general, throughout the years. And, if we are and we can close out a deal for Enzo, then, he would be another darling in front of the Cop as well.
Yeah, look, Mascherano was, I often put him into quite a few teams that on a playing level, he may not have got into in terms of just pure talent. But that mentality that I think you guys are alluding to, that a 21-year-old Enzo is showing, was the reason why I loved Mascherano. I'll never say die attitude. And you can see it already in Enzo. I mean, you know, I wasn't aware of his goal scoring threat as much as you guys are saying that he has. And if that's the case, that's another bow to his string. Or is it string to his bow, Avi? We always get mixed up with that one. Is it bow to his string?
Come on.
Bow to his string, yeah, just double checking. So, but yeah, look. And so therefore it leads to sort of rumors, stories, Zach. And I guess let me just get this up, see if I can get this up. I'll get your tweet up that I read this morning actually first. And well, first of all, you know, you spoke about the price tag, and obviously you spoke about the price tag because of, there's a reason, right? You spoke of a price tag because there is clubs making inquiries, right? And that's why the price tag's coming out. That's why stories of a release clause are coming out, because clubs have woken up or have already woken up to the fact that there's a kid at Benfica who has a release clause. So first and foremost, can you confirm that there is a release clause in his contract? Because that automatically suggests if you pay that release clause, they have to sell him. Or is that the case?
Yes, he does have a release clause. I think every player in Portugal has a release.
Ah, okay.
So yeah, I think that may be a rule of the league. But yeah, Enzo, when he signed the deal until 2027 with a release clause of 120 million euros. And yeah, Benfica, they paid 10 million up front, 8 million in pretty easily achievable bonuses that I would expect to be fulfilled. And I know that I read somewhere that Benfica would have to pay an additional bonus to River if they were to sell him in January. You know, I'm not too sure. That there's also rumors that Defensa y Justicia has a percentage of it. Then you've got to deal with solidarity payments and commissions, which will come out when the deal goes through. But I think that it's one thing is clear is that Benfica, if they do sell him, when they sell him, they're going to have to give up a significant portion of the pie. And that's why, for me, when people say like, oh, Benfica is going to sell him for 60 million, I mean, that's just laughable. That there's absolutely no chance. I think that when they do sell Enzo, for me, he will definitely be one of the most expensive midfielders, if not the most expensive midfielder of all time. I think that he will definitely be in that conversation. The fact is, he's been he's come in from another league and emerged as an indispensable player for Benfica, who have a pretty sizable gap atop the Primeira Liga, and who are one of two undefeated teams right now in Europe, alongside Paris Saint-Germain, and they also top their group of Paris Saint-Germain, Maccabi Haifa, and Juventus. And not only that, he's only just gone and gone to the biggest competition in sports and completely dominated. So I think that Benfica are well within their rights to demand a lot of money. They are very skilled at this, and I think that he's just a different player. You watch him play, and he's just so comfortable on and off the ball. He's so self-aware, I think, so mature, and all that stuff is going to make him flourish into a fantastic player. So, going into this World Cup, I was a bit concerned because I felt that Enzo, I think he made his Argentina debut in September, if I'm not mistaken. And so I think he'd only played once or twice before going to the World Cup. So I was a bit concerned that, he wouldn't be playing regularly when he's probably arguably the best midfielder that Argentina have, just because a lot of people they don't give the Primera Liga the respect it deserves. They think, oh, you're not playing for a PSG or an Atletico Madrid or a Bayern, you can't be good enough. So I'm very glad that Lionel Scaloni opened his eyes, and I think that it's interesting for a lot of tournaments. You can almost kind of pinpoint a eureka moment. And I remember, Argentina, obviously a very poor start, losing their first match to Saudi Arabia, and had a pretty dull start to the match against Mexico. And I remember Enzo was coming on, and my dad asked me, like, oh, what do you think of Enzo? Like, he plays for Benfica. Has he been good? And I was just telling him how good he's been. And I think like 10 minutes later, he goes and scores an absolute curler. So I definitely think that Argentina do not win this World Cup without Enzo. This has without a doubt been a team effort from the midfielders like McAllister and Rodrigo, from the defenders to the attackers to obviously Dibu Martinez in goal. But Enzo, the way he plays football, the way he's so composed in the biggest moments, I think that's absolutely massive for an Argentina team that has been, that has crumbled in a lot of key moments recently. And I think, getting across the finish line and, dusting themselves off after a pretty poor start to the tournament, that has a lot to do with Enzo's introduction in the starting lineup. So I think that he's definitely shown himself to be one of the best midfielders in football. And I think that Benfica fans are certainly resigned to the fact that he's probably not going to stay past the summer of 2023. Players of that caliber just do not stay. Benfica do not spend 20 million on or 22 million on Darwin Núñez and sign him from Almeria if they don't think that they can sell him for 75 million 2 years later. They're not going to spend less 18 million or so on Enzo if they don't think that they can sell him for a lot of money.
It's the way they operate. That's the way they operate, and of course it's a brilliant way of operating. That's some praise from Zach as well. And Jose Avi says, I'm a Benfica fan, and trust me, I've seen a lot of stars, and we know some of the stars Benfica has. Coming out from my club, but Enzo is different. His potential is unreal. Will be the best midfielder of the next generation. Zach and I agree, and I think you agree as well because we spoke about it. I don't think Argentina turn the World Cup performances around if it's not for the inclusion of Enzo and McAllister to the midfield. I think they revitalize that midfield. That being said, then, how does Enzo revitalize our midfield? Because our midfield absolutely needs revitalization. And it's so obvious now, the way you guys have spoken about him, what he brings to this Liverpool side, doesn't he? It's the reason why we're chasing him. And I do believe we are in for him, but I believe we've been in for him before the World Cup, which suggests our scouting system isn't completely dead and out in the water like a lot of people think, right? Because it does suit the profile that we need at Liverpool, right, Avi?
Yeah, and I think one thing that Jurgen has sort of alluded to a couple of seasons back, he did a video. He released a sort of like short interview about the technicians in the Portuguese league. And I know Enzo's obviously come from Argentina. His majority of his playing time has come from Argentina. But I think we're big fans of players going to Portugal where they learn maybe another skill set. Could be, just another facet to their game. And we go to Portugal like we have done with now Luis Diaz and like with Darwin Núñez and, potentially looking at a centre-back also from Benfica, Antonio Silva. And Enzo, learning his schooling in Benfica probably for the year. I don't think if we were to do a deal, it would be a January deal, considering that Benfica still have the Champions League to contend with.
Let's rule that out.
Yeah. So
a couple of people are asking the same question, and I'm sorry.
Summer 2023.
Yeah. There's absolutely zero chance of him coming in January. Absolute zero. So guys, there's that question.
There's something there, and obviously we know that Julian Ward has spent a lot of his time in Portugal too, and then obviously Pep Linders, who was at Porto, Vitor Matos, who's also on our coaching, who's also part of the coaches at Liverpool, spent time in Porto. So it makes sense that we're looking at, primarily players in the Portuguese league, and it goes to show that it is paying off. I mean, Luis Diaz with his injury, but he had a great start, from January up until that injury. Darwin Núñez, a little bit of a slow start, but now he's scoring goals. So, and Enzo's the other one where we might be thinking, let him do his year. If we really want to push forward, let's not get him for the money that we could have before he went to Benfica. Maybe they wanted, and sometimes people will say, but why would we wait if we knew that he's a talent? Sometimes that's just the case. Sometimes we want them to have their boarding in another league before we pounce on it. And if it means that we're paying high premium, so be it, because then it shows us that, he's ready for that next step. And I'm sure that's the case with Enzo.
Turkey Fish 15, love that name. He says, nearly everywhere he's plays, the team wins things. And that's a good, I know that's an obvious thing to say, but that's a good trait. Honestly, there's very few players that, take this winning mentality, luck, charm, call it what you want, persona everywhere they go. He says that Defensa, River Plate, Argentina, Benfica are flying this season. Enzo's a top player from what I've seen, and it's going to get better. And that's what's key, isn't it, Avi? Sticking with you just for a second. We need to start buying for the now and for the foreseeable future in this Liverpool 2.0, Klopp 2.0 Liverpool team. And the targets that we're pursuing, a la Jude, and Enzo, are of the age group and profile that are not only ready now, which is key, but also for the next foreseeable future. And that's key again in this profile of player, isn't it?
Yeah, and the midfield, Grizz, we've alluded to it. The players that we have, they've been great. Fabinho, Thiago, Henderson, the Milners, the lesser notes of Naby and Ox. And with Enzo coming, he will not only revitalize our midfield, he'll revitalize the players around him, because that just happens with youth players. When they come in, it just automatically gets the other players.
It had the desired effect. It had the desired effect on De Paul. Guys, we just seen it. Rodrigo De Paul struggled in the first couple of games.
Against Saudi.
And then as soon as the youngsters came in with him, they started doing the running for Rodrigo, who started doing the running for Messi. And and we saw the end result.
And Grizz, like Zach alluded to, he only had his debut in September. He's only played like 9 games already, and he's a World Cup winner already. So Scaloni, he's not a manager who should be taken lightly either. He's trusted this player to come in, and he's done a job for him. Not only done a job, but he's been a pivotal part of this Argentinian team. They hadn't won the World Cup since '86, and now he's already a player of the tournament. 10 games into his Argentinian career, won the World Cup. Like you said, he's won things at River Plate, at Benfica. So he's coming with that winning mentality. And that's the mentality that Jurgen Klopp so pines for. He wants players coming in already who've had success at their club.
I wanted to sort of speak on sort of where the news is emanating from. Before I do that, I was told this about a few weeks ago, but I didn't want to tweet it until sort of the links were more forthcoming. Zach, Rui Costa, the president of Benfica, was with Julian Ward at a sports conference and Dubai Globe Sports Seminar, which Julian Ward was there, Rui Costa was there, and Unai Emery was there. I was told of this information, and this is where the stories first started emanating from, before the World Cup. So people that are suggesting that Liverpool have just seen the World Cup and have thought, yo, this player looks good, let's get on this case. No, we've been in talks with Benfica and Rui Costa, to my knowledge, before the World Cup. Now, obviously, no one knows what the status is of those talks and what the status is of in terms of how far an agreement has been reached or not been reached, as I think the case is. We're going to get on to sort of some of the outlets that have suggested there is an agreement in place with maybe one party, as in the player's agent. But I want to get your opinion on Benfica, as you said, are ultimately a selling club, right? They're ultimately a selling club. But they will now, especially now after the World Cup is had, be in a very, very strong bargaining position, won't they?
Absolutely. And I think that part of their bargaining position is also based on history, because the fact is, when you look at recent years, there are very few leagues that are better at exporting talents to the
Mm.
Premier League than the Primera Liga. You know, whether that's Bruno Fernandes and Ruben Diaz, and you know, so many top players who have made that. And should be noted that Enzo Fernandez and Nicolas Otamendi have become the first Primera Liga players ever to win a World Cup. And Enzo has only just gone and done that at 21 years old. So it's not a stretch to say that he's accomplished more than any you know U21 Primera Liga player at his age. Whether you're talking about João Felix, Diogo Costa, Vitinha, you know. But I do think that I think for sure that winning the World Cup is going to help them get top dollar for him, as well as the recent history of Primera Liga exports. You know, even someone like Darwin, who isn't, shall we say, a typical technically gifted Primera product, he's still doing, you know, fairly well for Liverpool. So I think that they definitely have that in their locker, and they also have the spotlight. You know, the spotlight of competing in the Champions League, of being one of two undefeated teams in Europe right now. So I definitely expect them to demand at least 80 million, probably more than that, given the fact that they're going to have to share a lot of it with
euros or pounds sterling or dollars or
I think it's
whatever.
8 million pounds they'll want.
Because I was of the understanding that if we want to purchase him now in January, which is obviously we all accepting it's a no-go, we would have to pay the full release clause, which is 120 million euros.
Yeah.
Right. So, and therefore, and also, am I right, guys? Can anyone confirm if you pay the release clause,
If you trigger, it's one payment. It's one payment.
You don't have the option of paying it in installments.
It's one
Is that
payment.
so?
Yeah.
Is that
a bit
one
like
payment?
Khanage. We triggered Khanate's release clause and we paid the 34 million, I think it was, very early on in 2021.
Okay, so Birth of an MCTV says you can pay release clause via installments. It's buyout clauses that have to be paid up front. I think it's a buyout clause in Enzo Fernandez's his contract. Would you say that's more correct, Zach? Is it a buyout clause or a release clause? But maybe we'll have to do a bit more research on that, maybe.
Yeah.
Unless you know.
I'm not sure what I think the distinction is that buyout is the club transfers the fee to the player and he pays it. I'm not 100% sure on the distinction, but I think you mentioned it. There's absolutely no chance that he leaves in January. I think I would bet a lot of money that
no. Yeah. So, I think most sane there's a few insane Liverpool fans, but most sane fans would say the same. But Avi, like Zach is suggesting the figure of 80 million, and that's now. One thing I will say in favor of Liverpool's price suggestion would be Darwin Núñez, for example, is a good example. But if you look at strikers and attackers values and prices in the transfer market, it always tends to be slightly more, let's say 10 to 15 million more than a midfielder. Like how many midfielders have gone for above 60 million, for example? I can't think of many at the top of my head. Can anyone think? Just Pogba, is it really? I don't know. Tchouaméni was
about 60. I think he was about 60, 70 around that much.
So this is my point. So if we take Tchouaméni as the most recent market price, I think it's a fair example.
Jude's going to go for higher, isn't he? So you can use Jude if you want to do it.
Well, we could use Jude, I believe, yeah. I mean, so what we're talking is probably in the region of 65 to 85.
8 million, yeah.
I think that's the region of price that we would be looking at.
But you have to remember as well that if Benfica were to sell him for 80 million, they'd only be getting 60 million. You know,
because the 25%
worth it for a player like Enzo. I'm not so sure. That's why I think that 80 million is probably a conservative estimate. And if Benfica keep playing at the same way that they've been doing over the first half of the season, I would probably expect it to be higher, potentially close to Pogba territory.
And you got to remember as well, Grizz, he's not going to be short of suitors either. You know, we can't just think that, you know, we've got a clear run at Enzo Fernandez.
No, absolutely. Of
Yeah,
course
there's going to
not.
be clubs
But,
out there
but,
like.
but what I'm trying to say,
PSG.
if we start looking at the prospective buyers for a player like Enzo, the profile of Enzo, and obviously where Enzo would like to go, because Enzo will have, as you guys said, the choice of the greatest club. He won't just go to, for example, I'm just putting it out there. Imagine Newcastle, because they've got the money. Newcastle can put up that money, but surely he won't choose Newcastle as the next step. Do you get what I mean? So if you narrow that down, and like it's been suggested, and I believe we've been doing a lot of groundwork, very much like in the Jude Bellingham side of things, and we're very much in the market for him. I'd say it's the usual suspects. It comes down to Real Madrid, Manchester City, and Liverpool. Where do you see him at Real Madrid, Javi? If that was the case, and we're saying Real Madrid, is there a space for Enzo Fernandez at Real Madrid?
Well, they got rid of Casemiro, but they've got in obviously Shumani, and they're still going with the Cruz Modric combination because Camavinga hasn't played, but every time he does come on, he makes an effect. So there probably is space for Enzo Fernandez in Madrid, but you know, if Ancelotti is there and the way Madrid do it, they do try to bring in players of that ilk like in slowly. But sooner or later, Cruz and Modric, you know, they're 36, and I think Cruz is 35. You know, they're gonna have to make that swift change pretty soon. And Enzo could be that fitting player that just comes in alongside of Shumani and then Camavinga, obviously. You know, that three is set for the next 10 years. We know where we need him, and he'll come in pretty much straight away. But again, with Jurgen Klopp, with Pep Linders, they might, and this is why it makes sense to get him in, if they were to get him in the summer, because they've got that preseason, bed him in slowly. I don't think he'll probably start from the off, a bit like they did with Darwin Núñez, a bit like they did with Fabinho as well when he first joined. You know, bring him in slowly in spurts. So yeah, and Valverde too. Yeah, you know, how can I forget Federico Valverde for Real Madrid? So you know, I think there is space for him in that Real Madrid team. There's space for him in Manchester City team. Gundogan, De Bruyne. You know, I know Fernandinho's gone there, but you know that midfield at Man City is not getting any younger either. So
Yeah.
you know it's anyone's game. But obviously the strong links are coming out of South America, and during the World Cup was that Liverpool, you know, seemingly, you know, and it's just paper talk. It's not like any, you know, exclusive here, but we are pretty much maybe the front runners for this deal.
I'm pretty much saying that we're in for him. If you want that as an exclusive, I don't know. I'm from
I'll take your word for it.
From people that I've spoken to, we are absolutely very much in for him. But it's not as sort of. I don't think it's far down the line as sort of the Jude chat and sort of the rumors. And this is where I wanted to. Of course, this is from our friends at This Is Anfield, very good friends of the show. Always use their site for any reference. Liverpool, Zach.
No.
One of the reasons why I love your insights is you can sort of maybe break down the how shall we put it, Avi? Sort of the outlets, reliability wise, in terms of the track record, in terms of their stature,
the credibility.
Yeah. So look, as it says, after a host of stories from Portugal and Argentina suggesting Liverpool had a pre-agreement in place to sign Fernandez last week, another encouraging report surfaced on Portugal. Jogo, Zach, a good source of the Darwin Núñez move. They were one of the very first ones. The time that you was on the show last time about the Darwin Núñez, I was pretty much told that Darwin Núñez will be a Liverpool player. I haven't been told that Enzo Fernandez will be a Liverpool player, but we are very much in for him. So before people say, "Oh, Grizz channel said it's done," no, it's far from being done. But we are very much in talks with Benfica and their people. Jogo, reliability, credibility. What do you suggest to say to us?
Yeah, I would say Ojogo are pretty reliable. I mean, the three major outlets in Portugal are Ojogo, Record, and Abola. So those three, I think, will be putting some down the line. But with regards to Enzo's suitors, you mentioned would he go to Newcastle? I agree. I don't think he would go to Newcastle. But if they were to get Champions League football, I do think that changes things a lot.
Really?
I think so. I mean, obviously Enzo he would want to go to a bigger club, but the fact is Enzo. I mean, Newcastle, they look like the real deal right now. They have a ton of money, and they're going in one direction only. So, I would not. They would not be my first choice, I think, but I also don't know if I would write them off. I think that in terms of, I think it also depends on whether they get top four or not. But apart from Newcastle, for me, the likeliest teams to sign Enzo, PSG have Verratti and Vitinha. I don't see them signing him. Bayern, I don't think they could afford him. I don't think any club in Serie A could afford him. Looking at La Liga, and Barcelona have Gavi and Pedri. I don't think that they're going to shell out 100 million or so for a midfielder, considering their financial issues. So that just leaves Real Madrid in La Liga, and I do think that Real, I certainly wouldn't write them off. They would be one of my picks, and there are several reasons for that. Vinicius Jr. just got EU citizenship, so that means that I believe all three of Real Madrid's non-EU spots are free to go. And obviously they're going to bring in Endrick, but that's not until 2024. So they've got a lot of room to play around with, whether that's getting Enzo, whether that's getting another Brazilian talent who's older than 16, whether that's getting Jude. Of course, we know he's not an EU player anymore, but I think that they will be in for a midfielder fairly soon. I could certainly see them going for it because, Luka Modric is 37, I believe. Toni Kroos is, I think, 32, 31.
32, yeah.
Both of those players, both of their contracts are set to expire at the end of the season. I know that Kroos, he's still playing at a very high level, but I think he mentioned before the season that, he didn't want to renew his contract until he sees how he's doing. He doesn't want to be playing at a poor level and holding Real Madrid back, which I definitely respect a lot. So I'm not sure what Kroos's deal is. He's someone who's won everything there is to win, and maybe he wants to have an early retirement. I'm not sure. But I do think that midfielder is an area where Real Madrid will be looking to reinforce, even with players such as Aurelien Tchouameni, Eduardo Camavinga, Federico Valverde. So I certainly would put them in around the top of potential suitors. Then moving on to the Premier League, we already discussed Newcastle, and I think that Manchester City could potentially be interested in him. I mean, they obviously have a ton of midfielders.
Rodri too.
De Bruyne, Foden, and Gundogan, but they're a team that's always trying to get their hands on the next big thing. So I would definitely expect them to be in the race as well. And Chelsea, I think that they are going to be on the lookout for a lot of midfielders. I think there's a good chance that N'Golo Kante and Jorginho will leave at the end of the season, so that really just leaves Mateo Kovacic. I would definitely expect them, especially with Todd Bowley's real focus on young players. I would probably expect them to be in the race as well. Manchester United, I'm not sure. I mean, I wouldn't
forget about them. Forget about Manchester on this channel. Manchester United, forget about them.
They're doing fairly well with Casemiro and Eriksen. So
but Grizz, we say Manchester United, but Lisandro Martinez, Garnacho,
of course,
Enzo. He's got a bit of contingent there.
I say it tongue in cheek, but if you look at it from that point of view, I definitely think Manchester City, out of those options that we've discussed in terms of possible suitors, and especially if we beat them to Jude, like I'm absolutely convinced we will beat them to Jude, because Man City correspondents suggest that they are front runners for Jude. I, with a couple of other Liverpool correspondents, believe Jude is set for Liverpool. They will want to have the next big midfield star, and Enzo is absolutely. And his relationship, or we don't know if there is a relationship with Alvarez, but they must know each other from their time through the youth ranks and playing with the national team.
It would be a nice movement, though, wouldn't it? If he went
that
to
would
City.
be, and you can see all the attributes. Unfortunately, through gritted teeth, all those attributes that we've discussed suit Pep Guardiola down to
Aguero too. Grizz, Aguero would have a big influence because he was around that squad as well, wasn't he?
Absolutely. And this is why I guess I don't think we'd be too happy with the news coming out of our links, and because I think we tried to do it on the hush quiet before the World Cup. So what these stories, according to what I have been told and read, is we've tried to secure this before the World Cup. Unfortunately, we weren't able to agree everything in principle before the World Cup, and so therefore it puts us in a very difficult position because of the teams we've discussed and its performances and the value. And now it's just, well, what we discussed before the World Cup, guys, unfortunately doesn't count. We just added another 20, 30 million euros to his price tag, which obviously will probably put us off. But the fact, Avi, that we're targeting, and it's encouraging that we're looking to refresh this midfield, it does bode well, doesn't it? Because that's what we need as Liverpool fans, to know that we're in the market for these top players now, and not only looking for potential and they may come good, right?
It is, but Grizz, I don't want to I don't want lightning to strike twice. I know me and you firmly believe that a deal, last summer was sort of set in stone for Tchouaméni. And we still believe that if Madrid had not got Mbappe, if Madrid had gone through with Mbappe, then there's no doubt
he would be a Liverpool player.
Tchouaméni would be a Liverpool player. With Enzo, after the World Cup that he's had, there will be plenty of suitors for him.
Absolutely.
So I would love Enzo. I would love, obviously, Jude. I think that is further down the line than the Enzo, like potentially an Enzo deal. But if we're actually serious, then we actually need to secure one, because it's all fair and being linked with the players of this ilk, but we need one in. The players, there's other players out there that we can get like a 30-40 million pound player and develop him in becoming an 80-90 million pound player, another superstar like Klopp has done previously. But we want the now and the ready, and Enzo is one of those that we've got to just push for and secure.
Guys, we've got over 500 of you. We're wrapping up now. I really appreciate the love and support that you've shown us today. Please, if you could all smash a like button, make sure you follow Zach Lowy on all his social media. If you click on his Twitter profile, all the links to his socials are there. He's been a wonderful guest, and I'd really like you to all follow and support him as well. Just a couple of questions for you guys to go through very quickly. You first, Zach. Benfica are close to securing an initial loan move for Emre Can from Dortmund with an obligation to buy in the summer. What do you make of that news? And is that kind of just setting up for eventual sale of Enzo, like we've been discussing?
Yeah, that's the first I'm hearing of this. I've never heard of La Gazzetta Express, but I'm assuming they're reliable. I'm not too sure.
They're an Italian source, Zach.
Okay, fair enough.
If that's a bit obvious, so have you like Gazzetta?
But Grizz, Emre Can's also been playing centre back for the last 18 months as well.
Or is it? I'm not sure. Listen, I would be very shocked if that happens, to be honest with you. I do think that I think that Benfica, they will be looking for a midfielder this January because it's clear that they're a different team without Enzo, and we saw that earlier this week. They drew 1-1 to second-tier Moreirense and were eliminated from the Taça da Liga as a result. So it's undeniable that he's one of those indispensable players that you can't live without. And I do think that they will be going for a midfielder. I'm just, frankly, I would be very surprised if it's Emre Can. To be fair,
they have got a history of buying the more senior player. Yeah. Very much like the Otamendi.
They brought Julian Weigl,
Vertonghen, Julian Weigl from Dortmund. Yeah. They have got a history from going for the more, as well as bringing in amazing youngsters, sort of mixing the blend with a few senior
citizens.
That's very true. And you could add João Mario as well.
Yes.
They picked up Julian Draxler on deadline day on loan. But what the biggest thing that I'm the reason why I kind of laugh this rumor off is that it says obligation to buy. I mean, let's be real. Emre Can has not been in good form for the past few years. You're going to loan in a player who probably won't start, who's 27 years old, and who's you don't even know how well he's going to be. You're going to be obligated to buy it. I just think that's kind of a ridiculous rumor, and I would be shocked. I do think that I think that they will be busy though in the January window. I think that they need to go all in. This has been an unprecedented start to the campaign for them. They're chasing their first league title in 4 years. They want to go far in the Champions League. They just made the quarterfinals, and they're going to see if they can go farther. And I think that for sure, one thing that they need to do is stack up more on depth. So I think I would expect them to be in the market for a central midfielder. I would expect them to be in the market as well for a winger, because apart from David Neres, they don't really have a traditional winger on that team. So those are two areas where I definitely think they would be looking at. But yeah, just to reiterate, I think there's absolutely zero chance that Enzo leaves in January. And part of that is due to the way Enzo carries himself about his career. He's somebody who's always plotted out the next move very carefully. That's part of the reason I think why he decided to go to Benfica instead of a Premier League team. And I think that he realizes that he needs to play a full season. He needs to show that he can keep up this form across the course of 9 months. And I think that he also wouldn't want to abandon Benfica after they gave him this amazing platform. So I don't think there's any chance of him leaving in January. I think if I was a betting man, I would put a lot of money on him leaving in the summer. But as I said before, I do think Benfica will be in the market for a midfielder. I just don't think it will be a loan and obligation to buy for Emre Can.
We've got 2 more questions that I wanted to ask. Avi, I'll take one, you take one, because I'm a fair bloke.
Grizz, I've just got there is some breaking news coming out.
That's what I'm about to ask you. You know me, I'm 3 steps ahead in your brain. You think, but this is exactly what I was going to speak to you about. Correct or incorrect? There you go. So do you rate me now? Can I get a like from you, please? Can you get a like? Please, okay, there you go. Oh, there you go. We have some breaking news with Bill Simmons. Bill Simmons, I beg your pardon. You know my pronunciation. I'm surprised Zach didn't correct me. Fenway Sports Group and LeBron James will buy a new NBA team in Vegas for $4 billion. Yeah. This was very much on the cards, as we know. What do you make of this news?
Yeah, LeBron James has been talking this up for quite a while, that he wanted a NBA franchise in Vegas. It makes total sense. There's a scope for it. I do believe that a NBA team won't be operational in terms of, I don't think the team will be created until 2024. But it does suggest, that money's coming from somewhere. So, I don't want to say it may just be that they've funded this. Bank loans, of course, all that exists, but it could be that a deal for Liverpool Football Club is down the line too. So it makes total sense, and good luck to John and especially LeBron James in the new venture.
And I'll take the last question. John says, who is better between Enzo Fernandez and Moises Caicedo, and who would you prefer to come in alongside Jude Bellingham between the two? The reason why I'll take this is because I want to be the controversial one. I want to be the one, after we've given the massive, huge build-up and glorification of Enzo Fernandez. I think a deal for Moises Caicedo is far more doable, is far more realistic, and far more within not only our price, but in terms of the profile that I personally, and it's only a personal choice, people. I'm not talking about talent and value of player or the level of player, but for me, the profile of player that I would go for in January is a Moises Caicedo. That's just me. Moises Caicedo in January would be marvelous, and I believe it's far more realistic than an Enzo Fernandez, far more realistic. But I was planning to go for about 40 minutes, but with Zach and Navi, you can never have a chat for more than for last only 40 minutes. Wonderful show, wonderful chat. Of course, thank you very much, Zach, for coming on. It's been an absolute pleasure, my friend.
Thank you so much, as usual. It was a pleasure, and I hope to be on again soon.
We hope so. We hope we keep cherry picking some of Portugal's finest players, and so therefore we can get your valuable insight. Of course, Mr. Blue Chip in the building. Thank you very much for your much valued time. You can go back and start brokering £1 million deals.
I'm going to get on the phone to John Henry right now and see what's going on.
And see what's going on. Exactly. That would be amazing. People, still 500 of you in here. Wow, fantastic support. You stayed with us. Please like the stream on your way out. Subscribe to Blue Chip on social media. Subscribe to Zach's, the many platform that he works for, writes for. It's been fantastic chatting to you guys. Hope you guys have enjoyed the show. Liverpool in the market for Enzo Fernandez. Want to keep an eye on for the summer, but we face a lot of competition. Hope we've given you a bit of insight into what kind of player he is, where he came from, and the kind of money is involved. And the rest is up to Avi's mate John Henry if he signs on the dotted line or not. This has been Khanage. Take care. Bye-bye.